Good morning from Manila, ladies and gentlemen. It's great pleasure to see you all in this deep dive workshop, CCUS, the challenges of scaling up in Asia. This is the second CCUS related event under ASEF 2022 after the side event, which was held on 14th of this month with Clean Energy Ministerial. I'll be the host of this event, and let me introduce you straight away to the first speaker of this morning, Dr. Priyantha Vijayatunga. He is the Chief of the Energy Sector Group, Sustainable Development and Climate Change Division of ADB. He is a veteran of energy sector, having years of experience in academia, regulation, and of course, energy finance. Over to you, Dr. Priyantha, for your insight. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Darshak. It's great to be here and very generous introduction. Dear friends, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you, wherever you are joining from. I'm pleased to welcome you to this deep dive workshop on carbon capture, utilization, and storage. ADB recognizes the importance of regular interaction and dialogue with the stakeholders. Hence, this annual event is the Clean Energy Forum. And as Darshak quite rightly said, this is the second CCUS event we are holding. That itself shows the importance of we have placed on carbon capture and capture, utilization, and storage technologies in our operations. This year's theme of the ASEF, Asia Clean Energy Forum, is innovative and integrated solutions for a low carbon and a resilient future. While deciding the topics to be included in Asia Clean Energy Forum, we have taken care to see that the topics are relevant to the theme of Asia Clean Energy Forum and impact future decarbonization efforts of all of us. The importance of CCUS can be gauged from the fact that I told you the deep dive workshop and the side events have been held almost every year since 2016. This year's deep dive workshop is focused on technologies. We have invited proven and innovative technologies which have a large scope for implementation in Asia and the Pacific. Let me take this as an opportunity to briefly introduce these technologies or the presenters who are going to be delivering these technologies. We have invited Messrs. Carbon to introduce their CO2 capture technology, which is expected to reduce the price of CO2 captured by almost half or even less. The capture of CO2 is fundamental to the whole CCUS business, as all of us know, and any reduction in capture cost will help in faster implementation of CCUS in Asia. The next technology is presented by Messrs. Voima. They will discuss the application of carbon capture and utilization in waste-to-energy industry. Extensive urbanization, of course, is a major feature of development Asia, as all of us know, as all of us have experienced. The proposed technology is likely to play a significant role in improving sustainability of waste disposal in Asia. The third presentation comes from a sector, which is steel, which contributes to almost 7 to 8% of global emissions. So it's an important sector we have to deal with when it comes to GHG emission reductions. Earlier, ADB had carried out CCUS studies in the cement and petrochemical sectors. This time, we have worked with the steel sector to create a case study. These presentations will be followed by a discussion with the presenters with senior energy specialist, my own colleague, Mr. Atsumasa Sakai, and the senior academic from academician, Dr. Priyanka Kaushal from the Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi. I'm sure that this will be a fascinating dialogue among all these experts. This is also a good time for me to thank the government of the UK for their support for the CCUS fund of the ADB, which has financed almost all our activities for years. Their support has been instrumental in promoting CCUS in Asia since 2013, in fact, almost 10 years. UK has been a leader in CCUS in its own right. I look forward to hearing from Mr. Tom Morley about the way forward on CCUS implementation as he sees it. As far as ADB is concerned, CCUS is already part of the new energy policy 2021. That's one of the few technologies identified in the 2021 energy policy. So that itself shows the importance of we have placed on CCUS. Thus, all the deserving projects and promotional activities will be supported by us. ADB sees extensive CCU carbon capture and utilization opportunities in cement, steel, and hard-to-core sectors in whatever we come across. We also see possibilities of storing CO2 and making CO2 hubs. Happy to collaborate with the governments as far as ADB is concerned, technology suppliers, intermediate financial institutions, and GHG emitting industries. Please feel free to contact us anytime for any assistance you require. We will find ways to come and assist you. With these few remarks, let me wish all of you a fruitful deliberations during the next couple of hours, in fact, 1.5 hours. Thank you. Thank you very much for your presence again. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Priyanta, for your welcoming remarks. We now move over to a recorded message by Mr. Tom Morley. As Dr. Priyanta has said, BEIS UK has been one of the main promoters of CCUS fund that is in ADB. So I'll now request the recording to be started. Thank you.
Hello, many thanks for joining the ADB Asia Clean Energy Forum, the CCUS workshop here. My name is Tom Morley. I'm the International CCUS Engagement Lead here in the UK Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. We're delighted again to be invited by the ADB to give the opening remarks to this event. It's the 5th year that we have been involved in the workshop, and we're really looking forward to hearing from our distinguished speakers, panelists and the audience on their experiences of developing CCUS in the region. A big focus of this year's ACEF is on the practical experiences of projects, policies and activities, touching on lessons learned in developing innovative clean technologies in the UK like CCUS and abroad. We're happy to share the status of the CCUS developments in the UK and look forward to hearing more about the discussions held at today's event that aim to facilitate industrial decarbonisation. Next slide, please. In this first presentation, I'll be running through the international CCUS opportunity, the UK's CCUS programme and commitments, our progress to date, including some funding mechanisms, and finally, the international initiatives and support that might be relevant for other regions with CCUS ambitions. Next slide, please. In terms of CCUS as a global opportunity, we know CCUS is going to be vital in the transition to net zero. CCUS is a technically proven technology, and there are 27 CCUS projects in commercial operation worldwide, capturing around 36 megatons of CO2 per year in 2021. There are also 71 CCS facilities that have been newly announced, and the GCCSI have got some reports out on the global status of CCS, which are well worth a read. CCUS is essential for decarbonising industry in the Asia-Pacific region. The first commercial project or commercial CCS project was announced in both Indonesia and Malaysia, and China, India and Indonesia are in the top 10 countries most in need of CCUS deployment. There's a huge climate mitigation potential with CCUS. CCUS accounts for around 15% of the global cumulative emission reductions needed to reach net zero in 2070. And that was again published in an IEA report in 2020. Next slide, please. Okay, so in the UK, our net zero strategy by 2050 emphasised the importance of decarbonising industry using renewable technologies such as CCUS. The UK has the potential to store more than 78 billion tonnes of carbon dioxide in its continental shelf, which is one of the largest potential storage capacities in Europe, and enough to support the UK's demand for hundreds of years. The UK is well placed to lead in CCUS globally, with extensive experience from the oil, gas and petrochemical sector, and also obviously the substantial CO2 storage potential and industrial infrastructure, such as gas networks. Industrial CCUS clusters can be the starting point for a new carbon capture industry, and that's what we're attempting here in the UK. You'll see in the figure on the right that there are many industrial cluster locations we can utilise whilst considering CO2 capture here in the UK. There's a fortuitous overlap between the locations where we need carbon abatement and where we are looking for support to support high-value job opportunities to support a just transition to net zero, again here in the UK. There's a disclaimer at the bottom which includes a definition on a cluster, which you may be aware of, at least 2 CO2 capture projects with access to a transport and storage network. Next slide, please. Wonderful. Okay, so the UK's domestic carbon capture usage and storage programme has a number of commitments, and we hope to receive or realise some benefits by 2030. The commitment here in the UK is that we'll have at least 2 clusters by the mid-2020s and 4 by 2030 operational. At least one of these is going to have a CCUS power station by the mid-2020s. Some of the benefits we see or we hope to see on this will be that we capture 20 to 30 megatons per year of CO2. We might also support 10 gigawatts of low carbon hydrogen and aim to support also 50,000 jobs here in the UK. Next slide, please. Great, okay, so here in the UK, we have a delivery plan for CCUS up until 2035, where we hope to have fully delivered a fully decarbonised power system, incorporating our CCUS cluster and carbon dioxide removal commitments. At the moment, again, as you'll see on this delivery plan, we have completed our first cluster sequencing campaign, and we're in the process of choosing our shortlisted CO2 emitters that will be included in these 2 CCUS clusters. Again, you'll see by the plan there are many milestones we need to hit in order to meet our legally binding commitment, which you'll see on the bottom right-hand corner. This legally binding commitment is that we'll have 78% emission reductions by 2035. Now, this is a big step here in the UK in our transition to net zero to ensure that it's a legally binding target, and we essentially have to meet this. Of course, we're committed to sharing our continued CCUS progress and lessons learned on the global stage through multilateral events such as this one, and we hope that the UK's progress and expertise can be of considerable use in the future. Next slide, please. Great, okay, so now on to the funding and support aspects of CCUS. So here in the UK, we've split our funding and support mechanisms into development funding, capital funding and revenue funding. And on this screen, you'll see some examples of each. The UK is committed to various capital funding programmes to support our CCUS ambitions, which have been pretty influential. This includes our £1 billion CCUS infrastructure fund for industrial carbon capture and transport and storage projects, and also our £240 million net zero hydrogen fund. Perhaps most importantly and relevant for the global CCUS agenda is our commitment to development funding, which has the potential to advance innovative CCUS technologies for multiple uses worldwide. Next slide, please. The UK also supports international climate finance. So the UK official development assistance supports climate mitigation and adaptation in ODA eligible countries. This year or recently, there was an increase in the UK international climate finance to £11.6 billion over the next 5 years, and that's up to 2025 and 2026. The areas for this international climate finance, or focus there for the international climate finance, include strengthening global peace, security and governance, strengthening resilience in response to crisis, promoting global prosperity and tackling extreme poverty, aiming to help some of the world's most vulnerable. Additionally, in order to share knowledge and advance CCUS technologies in other regions, we in the UK join many international fora and events. These include the Clean Energy Ministerial, Mission Innovation, the Carbon Sequestration Leadership Forum, and the ACT programme, which accelerates CCS technologies. These are brilliant programs and brilliant platforms for multilateral engagement, and we encourage many others with CCUS ambitions to participate in these if possible. Next slide, please. Excellent, so that's everything from me. A big thank you once again for inviting the UK to speak at this event. We're sorry not to have been able to join live, but we really look forward to hearing how the event unfolds in the coming days. Many thanks.
So that was a very, very interesting presentation from UK, and I'll encourage everybody to visit the BEIS website, where CCUS has been displayed quite interestingly. A lot of those reports that you mentioned are there on their website. So now we move on to the technical session, and the first technical speech is by Mr. Henrik Flescher. He is representing Messrs. Carbon. Mr. Henrik has been in many leadership roles, including one in Navy. He has been a leader on a shipyard, and he has been a business representative. So very rich experience we are going to have from him. Over to you, Mr. Henrik.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all ADB for facilitating this very important conference. I want to start with a word of optimism. We had a think tank looking into what is the impact of carbon capture on a grand scale, and it's very meaningful to learn that if we were to say that all new power stations from now on would start with carbon capture, the global CO2 emissions could be reduced after 15 years, 19, maybe even 20%. And that would actually fix the whole climate issue and bring us to where we want to be. So I just want to pump us all up by saying what we are actually doing is extremely important on the large scale. So what each and every one of us do here, I think will be very, very meaningful on the large scale for all people on this planet. So Carbon is a commercial enterprise. We have been at this since many years. We have filed patents. We have built demonstration units all the way back to 2005 and 2006. And from that moment on, we selected technologies in particular because if you want to scale up carbon capture, you have to have a combination of mechanical and chemical apparatuses working for you in a capture unit. We have ended up and selected something called hot potassium carbonate. We think it is scalable. We think we can use this for the energy sector, for the metal smelting industry, for cement plants and other large, wherever there is combustion of fossil fuel. We are rather focused on enhanced oil recovery for the simple reason that it is one of several ways to pay for the costs of the cleanup. And so in some of the markets where we are, it is driven by the use of CO2, which still is a very key and difficult point, which is where do we store and deposit the carbon dioxide? Enhanced oil recovery is one of several ways. We are hoping also in the future to use carbon dioxide for new materials. Next slide, please. So the plants that we are focusing on are, we call them retrofit plants. In other words, we are attaching our capture unit onto an existing emission source. We call it here on this slide a host plant. It could be an energy facility, a gas-fired power station, a coal-fired power station, an oil-fired power station, or any other place where from a CO2-rich stream of exhaust gas is coming. We add our plant. It's self-sufficient. It produces its own energy, so you don't interrupt the host plant if you mount a capture unit, and it independently will immediately start capturing the CO2. It consists of a gas turbine which pressurizes the flue gas incoming, the exhaust gas. We add air and natural gas to it and combust the mixture of exhaust gas, natural gas and air one more time before it goes into the hot potassium carbonate unit, where it can remove as much as 90% of the CO2 in that gas, as well as other pollutants such as, and very importantly, methane. CH4 is another pollutant that we will hear more and more about in the coming future. All of that is removed by our HPC unit. Next slide, please. So this is a not to scale illustration on, you can see on the green field here, the capture unit, it is blown up. It will not be larger than the host plant to the left. It is actually the other way around. In fact, because of our pressurized plant technology, our footprint is very small, and you may want to compare what we do with an amine absorbing CCS unit. And I can tell you that a pressurized system like ours will need less footprint, in fact, about 1/4 of the footprint for the corresponding amine plant, which has no pressure in its process. Next slide, please. So I think, as you will appreciate, for a commercial enterprise, you need to try to carve out an area to operate in. We are focusing on 20 countries and jurisdictions. We have patent processes going in all of those countries in order to be able to focus and to protect our so-called intellectual property. We are filing patents because we need to do that as a commercial enterprise. And we are doing so around the world for the energy sector, for the marine side, which we will come to in a minute, showing you that actually another big area next to industry is actually the shipping industry. You may well know that 5% of all emissions are made from the sea, because at the sea, we have been using all the waste and very dirty fuels for a long, long time. The ships are sailing around the globe using up all the most dirty fuels we can think of. So we looked at that, and we have a solution which is also scalable for shipping. Next, please. I'm hoping we come, yeah. Every presentation has something unreadable. You just saw the list of patents. I'm not going to go into it. I just want to show you that in Stockholm, Sweden in 2007, and in Pennsylvania, America, we tested and demonstrated CO2 capture in excess of 99% all the way back in 2007, and in Sweden, and 2009 and 10 in America, showing that coal-fired exhaust gas can indeed be cleaned. We remove all NOx and SOx and CO2. In fact, we demonstrated 99% capture, from which we were very proud. Next slide, please. So the thing where we think is important for CCS to become global is, of course, that the cost levels have to be known. We have to chase low costs. I think the cost focus is something for the whole world to be interested in, because we can't afford, the world cannot afford another luxury version of carbon capture. We have to really look at costs. So we, being a private enterprise, privately funded, have always had huge focus on very robust equipment, which would produce low costs. So we capture CO2 at less than $30 per ton. We think there is potential to go further down. And it is all about the amount of energy required per ton or per kilo CO2. It is also important for the environment not to introduce new pollutants by CCS. So we are proud to tell you that hot potassium is an inert, completely benign substance which does not create any environmental problems. We think that's extremely important, because population will demand that this new measure of CCS cannot lead to more pollutions and chemistry which is unwanted. We think that that has been sorted by this choice of technology. Next slide, please. I'm hoping to show you the ship. Here is the ship. As I told you, our footprint of a pressurized system is very small, and this is quite well illustrated on the top illustration ship, where you see all the red components behind the wheelhouse on the vessel. We can install a carbon capture system on board this ship if it is LNG fired, and we remove more than 90% of the CO2 from a ship. You can see all the red parts in the aft that indicates the size in real scaled proportions. And then on the foredeck, you can see there that there are storage tanks. And in the future, we believe ships will carry this equipment so that we can remove pollutions from all this 100,000 ships out there which emit a substantial amount of carbon dioxide. Next slide, please. So we are global. I am speaking to you from Oslo, Norway. My colleague Andres is in London. We have an office in Korea, and we are very, very active in the Americas, where we have some rather large partners advising us on how to set it up, how to build large capture units. And I can tell you that the smallest unit we are in detail engineering for the United States will, if everything goes well, capture more than 20,000 tons CO2 per day. And from there, we will also go further to larger plants so that we can make a contribution to the large-scale CO2 removal globally. Next slide, please. Yeah, other project I just mentioned, the USA. We are active in Bahrain, in Korea, and actually also hoping to build a demo unit in India very soon. Next slide. Another way is to develop a very large CO2 carrier. On top there you see a 100,000 ton ship, because many countries will have the need to store CO2 in another place from where the capture has taken place. I think that's about it from our side. We're happy to take any questions if there will be any. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hendrik, for this very, very interesting presentation. I'm sure there are many things yet to be seen from your organization. We will be having more in the discussion that will follow. The next technical speaker is going to be Mr. Henry of Vyoma Industries. He is CEO of the company and will be sharing his experience in two different fronts, basically. One is waste to energy sector, where CO2 will be captured, and also, of course, it will help us to understand CO2 usage. Over to you, Mr. Henry. Thank you.
So good morning from Finland. Luckily, we have sun now 24 hours, so it's pretty fresh morning for me. I hope to see my screen. So I will be presenting a slightly similar solution as Henrik did, actually for the same technology, but with a smaller scale. So it's very good that we are aligned, more or less. So I will give a very short presentation about Voima, and then the main focus in the end is about the CCU, how we in Finland can utilize the carbon that we capture. So very shortly about Voima. So Voima is principally a company that is focusing on the waste to energy market. So we have a modular waste to energy power plant, which is fully scalable into smaller scale units. So one unit can treat roughly 50,000 tons of MSW or different waste fuels, and it's fully scalable. So by adding more modules, you can increase the size of the plant, and basically we can offer our solutions to almost any size of landfill or customer who has access to waste. And difference to this big plants is that it's fully pre-engineered, and it's delivered as prefabricated and pre-tested in container size modules. So especially now when the world has been quite tricky to deliver, and access to different sites has been different during the last 2 to 3 years, especially this type of concept that you can deliver these containers to a nearest port and then from the nearest port to the site is very, very handy. Just not to go into details, but you see some of the modules here that it's easy to fabricate, we have tried to de-risk the site construction as much as possible. There is the biggest risk in these projects. Then we go to the carbon market. So I'm not going too much into details, but why we wanted to enter the carbon capture market is simply this. So there is room for us. So this is a market that is growing heavily, and we believe also that in Southeast Asia and Asian market this will be an issue very soon, and we see a lot of opportunities there. Just to explain where we fit in the value chain. So we are basically a waste to energy company, but in this carbon capture, we see a role in this carbon capture part, which represents roughly one fourth from the total. So we are not into liquefaction or any other transportation measures. So it's simply we are a technology provider for this. Then we move into the call it CC Voima is our new product. We use the same kind of methodology that as we did for the waste Voima plant. So it's fully modular. Smallest economically viable size has to be scalable. The smallest unit you see here is 20,000 tons per year. Henrik can capture 20,000 tons per day, but this is a slightly smaller unit, but which we can scale to a larger size as well. And same concept, so pre-engineered, prefabricated, flexible. We can fit to any size and can easily transport this. And it even can utilize as a test unit, so it can be relocated in case there will be a bigger plant or standalone plant after we have delivered this. It's fully integratable. So here you see our plant. We can easily upgrade or deliver the plant already as CC ready, as we call it. So the CCUS Voima supports both the carbon capture storage and carbon capture utilization. My presentation, I will be explaining more about the utilization part, which especially here in Finland is the way to go because we don't have any old oil fields where we can store. It's mainly in the Norway side. So at least at the moment, most of the projects that we are developing here, the Nordics are based on the utilization part. So as Henrik explained, we are also in the hot potassium carbonate technology. We believe that this is the way to go. We are cooperating with Norwegian company CO2 Capsule. We are the technology provider, and we are package this technology into a selling unit. And we believe that there are benefits in this technology compared to the amine-based technology. Anyway, in the market, there will be room for all providers, but we believe in this, and especially in the Nordics, where you can utilize all the heat from the exhaust gases. This is the way to go and more cost effective, especially in the OPEX side. Hot potassium carbonate, why? It's proven. It's non-toxic. We know that it works, and it's widely available. And this is a big thing, especially in the waste to energy business. Some of the chemicals might have limitations, so this is widely available. And we know that when we are delivering a plant anywhere in the planet, we can also rely that there is a chemical available. So I will not go too much into details with this, but at least for what we have seen when our customers are making the EIA assessment, this HPC is rather good in a way that the local administrative government officials also treat this as kind of easy chemical to get permission, and it helps. Then my main main focus in this presentation was asked to explain how we can utilize the CO2. So I come from Vaasa, which is the energy capital of Finland. We have big corporations here, Wärtsilä, ADB, Voima. This Energy Sampo consortium. There is already one project ongoing called HFlex-E project, where they have power to X technology, making use of the hydrogen. There will be another project, this synthetic methane project, where we are part of. There is a big waste to energy plant, or big, but 200,000 tons of MSW per year. And there will be a project around this plant, which I will explain you a little bit more in detail. So Energy Sampo CCU. Here you see this waste energy is the waste to energy plant, which at the moment it emits roughly 200,000 tons of CO2. So we will be having a pilot plant where we, as Voima, we would be the carbon capture plant provider. For the pilot, we capture that, as I mentioned, that 20,000 tons of CO2 per year. There will be electrolysis plant, production of green hydrogen from renewable electricity from the local windmills, and then they provide the green hydrogen from that, and utilizing our captured dioxide from the process, and using the methanation plant for that. And then there is a liquefaction plant, and the main goal of this whole plant is to replace fuels from the market. So roughly with this smaller scale pilot, we can produce roughly 8,000 tons of clean transport fuel. So this would go to the local market, and the whole plan of this is the exercise is to make a concept that we can actually sell overseas. So 20,000 tons, okay, it's not big, it's not too small, but we know that this is a scalable concept, and we have proven large players in this consortium, and we believe that this will be a model that we can replicate globally in different markets, especially in Southeast Asia. The US is a big potential, UK as mentioned, and definitely we can replace a lot of fossil fuels from the market, especially in this geopolitical situation where we are. So I'm happy to provide further information and answers to this. This was a very short glimpse what we do, but we see that the carbon that we capture from the industry has to have it has value. So there are business opportunities not only to capture and storage. So we in Finland are quite innovative. So we believe that there will be business opportunities around this, definitely. And the market is evolving. So we definitely see that even though there is not a clear mechanism at the moment how the business case looks like, but we see that this is moving very rapidly forward, and very optimistic that we will find good business opportunities also from Southeast Asia. So I think I used my time well. So thank you very much, and hope to give more answers in the panel discussion. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mr. Henry. You certainly used your time very well. So thank you so much for keeping the time. We'll look forward to further discussion. Next speaker is going to be Dr. Liang Xi. I mean, those who are in CCS world, they especially was working in China, they don't need his introduction. He has been one of the leading lights. All these years have been working him and learning a lot from his knowledge. He has been not only a very active player in China, but has been, as he has said, his introduction, he's a professor in UK on green transition. He has been somebody who has worked on academia, CO2 related policy, technology, and so on. Dr. Xi is working on a steel related project for ADB, and he will be presenting that. Over to you, Dr. Xi, for your presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Dasha, for the introduction, and thanks to ADB's invite and also support this technical assistance projects to look at carbon capture utilization at the steel plant, typical steel plant in China. So my talk will form by 4 parts. I'll give an overview about the background, project technical design, financial analysis, and conclusion. And given the constraint of time, it's going to be quite high level, but we will be very delighted to share the report in the future when the approval is ready. So as you may know, China has committed to carbon neutrality 2 years ago, and that made the whole CCS society in the country very, very busy. And the whole world has committed for more than 80% of greenhouse gases to be carbon neutrality. And China contributes to more than half of steel production in the world in the last decade. And steel sector is the second largest emission source in China, and potentially will be included in the carbon market in the next couple of years. According to IEA's report on transforming industry through CCUS, over 28 gigaton of CO2 will be captured from industry sources like cement, steel, chemical sector, where renewable will be marginally more difficult to than the power sector to replace fossil fuel. Therefore, fossil fuel with carbon capture and storage is critical technology for industry. So ADB initiated this project into 2021, and we selected long steel at Shanxi province for the study. So long steel Shanxi province, Longmen Steel is a state-owned company in Shanxi province. You may have already heard of Shou Steel or Baowu Steel, Baowu, which is the largest one in the world. And Longmen Steel is the largest steel plant in Shanxi province. So it has involved business from mining to sintering, iron making, steel making, rolling, and to including other environment-related auxiliary plants. And the company has an area of 5,400 square meters along the Yellow River in a very beautiful part of the Yellow River. So welcome to visit if pandemic gone, and a very interesting place. And it has a 5 blast furnace, a very typical blast furnace, and 3 sintering machine, and 6 steel making converter, 5 casting machine, 3 bar rolling mills, and 1 wire rolling mill. So Longmen Steel plant, although is not in the developed area of China, it has a strong interest to explore low carbon technology, and have very strong interest to explore carbon capture and storage. And this project consider building a 500,000 ton CCU demonstration project in the plant, because China has not yet built any commercial scale carbon capture projects in steel plants. So we started from a very moderate scale, commercial scale CCUS project. And we calculated the carbon footprint of the product can be reduced by 116 kilogram equivalent per ton of crude steel from the whole Longmen Steel plant. The number will be maybe 3 or 4 times higher if you just take into account 1 blast furnace. So this will help them to significantly reduce the carbon footprint. To do this study, we try to explore a few topics, like including feasibility of project design, select suitable carbon capture technology from flue gas of the project, conduct a feasibility study of storage, conduct necessary investigation, data collection, and identify environment protection, water soil conversion issue, land use issue, and a proposed engineering scheme for the overall planning, and project investment estimation and financial evaluation, carry out energy saving, risk analysis, economic and social analysis, and put forward concluding comments and suggestions on the feasibility of the projects. And Lohmann Steel owns a total capacity of 7 million tons crude steel per year. And the CO2 emission from the 5 blast furnace, sorry, there's a typo, is over 8 million tons per year. And among them, the 4th blast furnace has a capacity of 1,800 square meter, which is the largest one and the most modern one. So we selected the 4th blast furnace as a CO2 emission source for the projects. And there's over 10,000 square meters along the blast furnace available for retrofit with carbon capture and storage. And for this blast furnace, this annual emission will be approximately 1.9 million ton, and carbon capture is 500,000 ton, is a partial carbon capture from the plant. And from the right-hand side, you can see the blast furnace, a few chain of steel production along the river at the long steel projects. And to enable knowledge sharing, so in the design of CO2 capture, we ultimately designed to put MEA process in the report. So the traditional MEA process, as you may know, use amine solution, go into absorption at a lower temperature, and the CO2-rich amine will go to desorption process at a higher temperature, and then CO2 will be released and condensed and compressed, and lean amine will come back to absorption column. And we also investigate the need for water wash before the flue gas go into the absorption in order to further reduce SOx and other small particulate matters, and investigate the potential for heat exchange to improve the efficiency as well as solvent management requirements. So CO2, after it's been captured, will need to be compressed, purified, and dehydrated before it go into pipeline for transport and storage. If the selection of pipeline transport storage is at a supercritical stage or status of CO2, then we need to compress the CO2 to more than 75 bar in order to before it can be transported for storage. So the CO2 products quality really depends on how CO2 is used, utilized, and transported. And in this case study, we try to be innovative to use a methanol CO2 utilization for methanol production. It's very popular in China, but there are still some energy consumption and cost issue to be resolved. But we find out for 500,000 ton scale, it's possible to demonstrate this technology is for reverse water gas shift reaction, and then hydrogen is generated to methanol. And the owner of the project is also very interested in these technologies. And the projects will have some risk with CCUS, including amine leakage, volatilization. If we use MEA, the toxic content will be less than many proprietary amine. We still need to monitor the issue. It also increase the cost if we cannot have a good solvent management. And we also identify the chemical impurity in chemical reaction of carbon capture result to reduce harmful gas, and identify what's the impacts on other pollution concentrations. During the cost analysis, we find out the project required 238 million yuan cost investment. I believe the number is very low compared to the number in Europe. It is 1/3 of the cost in Europe. So that's a cost breakdown. And we propose to use a combination of 70% concessional loan and 30% of equity to finance the projects. So to conclude, we believe to do a CCUS project in iron and steel industry is technically viable, and we believe a demonstration project is useful for Shanxi, for Ordos Basin, as well as for other province steel plants as a reference, like Guangdong. And a CCUS project can be implemented at 500,000 ton at a long steel. We also need to investigate policy support at the next step, like dedicated carbon price support, RD&D ground green steel certificate scheme. There could be potential mechanism to enable the next stage of the projects. And we appreciate support by Kim Yong Lam, Jingmiao Xu, Dasha, Mita from ADB, and also Shanxi governments and Long Steel for their knowledge support and arrangement, and also thanks to UK CCS Fund. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ji, for that timely completion of your presentation. I'm sure there are lots and lots many questions, and this will be a very, very interesting study to read. Now we are going in the next very interesting session, wherein there is going to be a technical discussion with all these experts. Mr. Atsuma Sakai, Senior Energy Specialist in East Asia Division of ADB. He will be leading this and moderating this panel discussion. So, and he will be joined by Dr. Priyanta from Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi, who has also been one of the panel members for selection of the CarbonX Prize Technology Challenge. Over to you, Mr. Atsuma Sakai. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Darshak-san, for your kind introduction. And hello, everyone. My name is Atsumasa Sakai, Senior Energy Specialist from Asian Development Bank. And I'm the moderator of this panel discussion. And the reason is possibly because I'm also in charge of technical assistance in the People's Republic of China of the demonstrated CCS plant in Shanxi province. And the counterpart is a chemical plant partner. And the major objective of this session is to discuss how to scale up the CCUS concept in Asia and Pacific countries. And for this purpose, today we have the welcomed distinguished speakers from the various industries. And in addition to the three distinguished speakers, we will also welcome one more distinguished speaker from India, Professor Priyanka. So before starting the discussion, let me start from the Professor Priyanka for her view of the overall technology and landscape, as well as also the situation in India. So Professor Priyanka, let me ask some question. So I understand that you also joined some unique contest in California, US, the carbon context.
Right.
So, yes. So from your experience, can you let us know how much do you think attractive the carbon capture technologies as an investment targets compared to the other climate change technologies such as the battery technologies or the non-silicon solar power generation technologies? And this would be interesting the insights. Yeah. So please.
Thank you, Mr. Atsu. Yes, I did participate. I mean, I was one of the judges for the CarbonX Prize competition. And to answer your first question, I do see a lot of opportunity with respect to other interventions that we are looking at to mitigate the climate change. So carbon capture and utilization, CCUS, is certainly there at the horizon. And it's very interesting to see that how technology is progressing, right? I mean, if you looked 10 years back, the only option that we had, commercially viable option that was there, was the amine-based solution. And today we heard two of the new entrant in the field who are talking about an alternate solution, which is potassium-based. So technology is also growing very fast. Investments are also happening, but we need to underpin it with other market tools and mechanisms as well. But talking about my experience at the Carbon X Prize, I could say that there are a lot of emissions that happen. If you look at the IPCC mechanism and methodologies, there's Scope 1, Scope 2, Scope 3 emissions. So I could certainly see that all the technology entrant that are there, sitting at the horizon, ready to break through, are very well addressing the Scope 1 emissions that are happening at source, at point. But it comes to Scope 2 and Scope 3, there is a lot need to be done. It's very encouraging to see that the technologies are there. They're sitting very high on the technology readiness level, and addressing the Scope 1 analysis, right? What's happening within the premises of the industry that we are targeting. But in the Scope 2 and the Scope 3, from where we are sourcing our materials, from where we are sourcing our energy, I could see that many of the energy challenges are addressed through renewables, which is a good thing. But let's raise the bar. Let's raise the bar. As such, CCUS is a wonderful technology. So can we improve the efficiencies? Can we bring in more circularity? I'm very happy to see that we didn't talk about it, but you could see all of them are bringing in circularity into the system. So can we make the circularity even more stronger? It's wonderful. Can we make it better? That is the question. And also, I'm very delighted to see that not just power plant, because whenever we talk about CCUS, the first image that comes to our mind are the big stacks at the power plant emitting flue gases. But we don't look at the other point source which have very high concentration of CO2. And I am happy to see that there are steel industry. We're talking about steel industry, which is again a major point source and high concentration point source of CO2. Technology is being developed for that, ready for commercialization. Hydrogen, methanol was also talked about. Yes. But as I told you, and which is a good thing. I mean, even if we are making fuel, we are aiming for negative emission. We are offsetting some amount of carbon, which is good. How we can promote it, how we can take it further, I think this is more of a responsibility of market mechanism and banking institutions like ADB, which is doing a wonderful job. I just came across the project that ADB is funding in Indonesia. And such steps and such interventions are required, to see the scale and the potential that CCUS has to take forward. Talking about India, because we know we are one of the major emitters as well, with a good amount of contribution that comes from the country, but we also have other very complex challenges. But CCUS is something that the government and the policymakers are addressing. And the mission innovation, the last speaker talked about mission innovation as well, and India has very aggressively taken CCUS into its mission innovation ambit, which is the R&D projects R&D and demonstration projects that the country plan to demonstrate in near future. So I do see a lot of work happening in CCUS. It needs some kind of policy support. It needs some kind of market mechanism, because industry, when they come, they want technology to be very mature. I mean, demonstration and token is not really that could achieve the scale that is required. So all the funding mechanism, banking institutions, all the tools need to be formulated to achieve that. And also very important thing that I would like to flag, and I'll end there, is that this mechanism, this solution for CCUS has to be specific. This one size fit all will not work. I mean, as the last speaker talked about, Europe has its own reality. They have their own geological structures and challenges. Some country may have the benefit of being storage, not talking about utilization, but for others, utilization is the route. So we have to be specific about what location, what region we are talking about, what are the realities there, what kind of technologies are developed there, at what cost the technologies that are developed will be available to these countries, because we have to collaborate here, and the banking system plays a very important role. So with this, I would end my initial comments. Thank you, Atsal.
Okay, so thank you very much, Professor Priyanka, for your very interesting insights. Yes. So before starting the full discussion, let me brief the background a little bit more. So Asian Clean Energy Forum has dealt with the CCUS concept every year, but this year is remarkable because the surrounding the environment has changed. Last year, we have observed that many governments announced their carbon neutral target by 2050. So this means just replacing the fossil fuel with renewable energy might not be enough. We also need to proactively capture the existing CO2 from the existing plants. And in fact, upon this government's announcement, the CO2 price traded in the ES market has been grown. So now I believe that the situation is getting more better for the CCUS deployment. So having said that, I would like to request today's panelists for your view, how we can make it better to have this CCUS concept more deployed in the Asian countries. So we have just received a comment from the Professor Priyanka in case of India. And her observation says that we need more push also from the public sector, including the government policies. So in that sense, I believe that the distinguished speaker has rich experience in these areas also, not only the technology aspect. So in that sense, let me first start from the Mr. Henrik Fleischer. I believe you have a great experience in the advanced countries like the US, how the political landscape would also affect the deployment of the CCS. Yes, so Mr. Henrik Fleischer, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Atsu-san. I think I share Professor Priyanka's optimism here. It is completely thinkable that we can have complete value chains built in pretty much any industry, not only from energy plants, but another example that we are working on, which looks very interesting, is from coking coal to green steel. You know, everybody has views on whether it's gas or coal source and so on, and there is some negativity around coal. But at least nobody's negative about steel. We all recognize, and even Greta recognizes, we have to have steel, right? And so it is completely thinkable to have a full value chain without emissions from the coking coal all the way to shipment of that coking coal to a steel mill with CO2 capture, and then, you know, CO2 shipments and CO2 sequestration or deposit. Completely thinkable. And we can develop more and more of these for complete value chains. And I agree with you, Professor Priyanka, there are more technology applications. There is no one size fits all. Everything is different. But it seems to me we are getting to that point where there is diversity also on the technology side. Where I think if we look at the Asian perspective, what seems to be still a very limiting factor, which is perhaps due for some more attention also from institutions like ADB, is to find studies where are we going to deposit the carbon dioxide, because the secondary use of carbon dioxide will take some time. We talk about methanol, we talk about new plastics, new materials, but it will take time. In the meantime, depository solutions, even, and maybe some people don't like it, it may not be policy, I'm aware of that, but enhanced oil recovery is in fact a way to do away with the carbon dioxide in a commercial manner, which pays for the costs. Because what it really does is that it pays for the costs of capture. And as such, it's a very neat mechanism to make this all happen. And it combines for later use, for chemical use, for replacing other fossil fuels. So I would say for Southeast Asia, the purpose of this seminar is how do we make it work in Asia? I think focus must increase strongly on the several opportunities for deposit and sequestration in Asia, because that will very soon be the limiting factor. not the technology. So from my side, just a signal of encouragement for the bank, maybe looking at or enabling studies into final destination for the carbon dioxide would be my suggestion as the next focus point for everyone to look at, because that is at the moment a very limiting factor indeed. But there is pore space. We heard the gentleman from the UK talking about the UK's waters for CO2 capture, the Northern Atlantic, the US, parts of Southeast Asia, a country like Brunei, Indonesia, Malaysia. There are opportunities for pore space to store the CO2, but it's not very much out in the open. It should become more available, and I can only encourage all participants to say, let's look for opportunities for CO2 capture and deposit. It's the next big thing limiting us in this development. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Henrik, for your insight. Yes. Actually, in order to deploy further the CCUS concept in Asia, we may need some more drastic change, a kind of the paradigm shift. So what I mean is not only to store the CO2, we also need to consider how to use CO2 as a resource. And we found that there are many activities or trial to how to utilize CO2. So it's a kind of the recycling CO2. So in that sense, I found that Mr. Henrik of the Wyoming have some interesting activities. And also that we appreciate your experience in the other Asian countries like the Vietnam. So Mr. Henry Wyoming, so may I have your experience, please?
Yeah, I have to agree with Professor Priyanka that what we believe, at least here in Finland and Nordics, that has to be circular. So you have to have certain aspects where you can utilize the CO2. So we especially now have a few projects for the synthetic methane. I don't know whether that applies directly in the Southeast Asian context, but what we are also checking and evaluating whether we could utilize that as part of the cement industry, and I see also the steel industry is one potential. The regulation is changing in Europe, which is good. So either you pay for your emissions or either you invest into technology, and I think that's a good initiative from the European Union. It's happening. So basically, as Henrik said, I think the technology is not an issue here. We do have technologies that can take the carbon out of the exhaust gases, but we do need to find business cases, and especially now what's happening in Europe, in the geopolitical situation is rather tough. So we need to find ways to replace fossil fuels. We need to find ways to replace gas, natural gas from Russia. So many things are happening now, and I think it will further speed up the development. From a Southeast Asian context, what we have found out from Vietnamese and Indonesian market. In Indonesia, we have seen that especially for the cement industry and the steel industry, there might be ways to utilize the CO2 capture, but probably there is a need for certain regulative measures that I haven't seen customers who are still yet willing to do that. And it would help that we have these small scale pilots, and that's especially when we have a small scale carbon capture unit, we could do some piloting, especially in Indonesia, Vietnam, with smaller scale and prove that the concept works, and then we go to the bigger scale. I think that's the way. And ADB might have a role in there, as Henrik said, that we need to find ways to find business cases in the local context. Probably the measures that we are doing in Europe might not work in the Asian context, but we definitely will find ways for that. Very optimistic about that. We need to do something. Then we are from the waste to energy business. So as long as we have landfills, and the methane from the landfills is still far more worse for the environment than having a plant. So whatever we do there will also help the climate change.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Henry, from your experience in Asian countries as well as the tough political situation in Europe. And let me also invite Dr. Shi Liang, and we appreciate your view to the other big Asian market, the People's Republic of China. And we understand that the People's Republic of China is also leading these activities thanks to the government, central government's strong initiative, and even trying to accomplish the CCUS hub. So Dr. Liang, so may I have your view how this CCUS concept is evolving in the People's Republic of China, and what needs to be filled the gap to further deploy this concept? So Dr. Liang, please.
Yes, I think since a lot of countries, including China, commits to carbon neutrality in the last couple of years, the importance of CCUS has been growing substantially in the country, from previously a reserve technology, a transition technology, to a backbone technology, because for many industry, it's critical to use CCS to decarbonize, like steel, cement, and many chemical process. It's very difficult to change a process to renewable or nuclear-based energy and the fuel source. And secondly, in China, a negative carbon emission has been moved up on the agenda. So air carbon capture, biomass with carbon capture and storage can achieve negative emission. So it also become a very interesting topic. Having said that, I think the actual investment, like US Fund 45Q or similar policy in Europe, the actual investment is still inadequate and still need to be enhanced from different departments with resource in China. But the country is still a developing country, so there's still a lot of priority. But I believe CCUS, many large-scale CCUS demonstration projects will happen in the 14th five-year plan. And as my personal belief is in 15th five-year plan, most high concentration sources of CO2, if they can be transport and storage or utilized, they will be sorted out in the 15th five-year plan. Thank you.
Okay, yes, thank you very much, Dr. Liang, from your perspective over the China's CCUS deployment. So now I would like to move to another topic about the CCUS development. So let's focus on how the public sector can support the deployment more. I understand that the funding is, of course, the one aspect to support the deployment. And for the purpose, the advanced countries like the US has provided a kind of the tax incentive, etc. But there should be the more things the public sector can do. For example, the Asian Development Bank, as an international development financier, we can support studies on, for example, how to further utilize the CO2 as resources, completing the CO2 recycle chain. So in that sense, may I know anyone who have any idea how the public sector can do more, especially for the Asian countries? Is there any volunteer?
Yeah, I can maybe, as I mentioned in my brief
Yes,
presentation, that there has to be, for new technology, there has to be some initiatives from the public sector in the beginning. Give you an example from Finland, as wind power, say 15 years ago. They said that it will never fly, it will not be efficient, it will not be cost effective. And they give initiatives to produce wind power. I think it was 19 cents, then 11 cents, and now they can produce it roughly with 4 cents per kilowatt hour. So I see similar trend in this CCUS discussion, that there has to be some pilot, there has to be initiatives like in UK. They are heavily funding this new technology. They see that there will be jobs, and everyone recognizes that we have to do something. So I don't know how that applies to the Asian context, but I see that in Europe we are moving. I mean, there will be initiatives and there will be cost. So 2028, 2030, there will be different measures that certain plants, they have to start to pay a fee. Either they invest in the technology or they pay a fee per ton they emit. So that's one very strong way. So there we have to develop business cases around this. So I see that that's one very strong initiative. At least it will start moving things. Business will find a way when there will be clear measures that, okay, from this day forward, you need to pay certain fee. I really much believe that then business will find a way to make that business case available.
Can I add, Atsu-san, to this point? I think it is very interesting to see actually Korea. South Korea has made a very good move. They have invited, in Korea, there is an offshore storage called the Dongha gas field, where government has actually invited propositions for the capture unit to capture 400,000 tons of CO2, transport it, and make the injection in one go. So actually here you see a government saying, I will now lead an inquiry to the markets. Come here, tell me your terms to build a capture unit for 400,000 tons and the transportation and the deposit in one big swoop. So if government cooperate with industry and say, here is actually a small value chain, please come and make a proposition. Show me your costing and on the terms. It's actually very practical and very interesting to see a government or an official body taking all these steps in one go. So that could be another way in Asia to say, I want to see a capture cost, I want to see a transportation cost, and I want to see the industrial maturity of the proposition made by a government or an official part of a government. I think that is very remarkable and a very active role taken, which should be followed by others. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Very interesting the comment from Mr. Henry of Wyoming and Mr. Henrik from the carbon. Yeah, definitely, I fully agree with both of your comment. Yeah, and I also want to recognize that in order to lower the cost itself, there is also the unique proposal. Yeah, I also recognize from Mr. Henrik Carbon's presentation that you are proposing the EPC ready module. So the standardized the equipment or the approach is another approach to lower the installation cost of the CCUS equipment. So in that sense, may I know if there is any industry alliance or the kind of the industry activities to standardize the equipment or the modules? Can anyone answer this question?
Yeah, I can answer that question. I think there is a difficulty in that every emission source has been built under different regimes and at different times. Some equipment is new, other equipment is old. So to some extent, there is tailor making at each of these capture units. But yes, you can use standardized components. If you use the same components in the same manner every time, you will achieve a certain amount of standardization, which is what you are addressing, which is an excellent point, Atsu-san, because you cannot invent and tailor make the entire system every time. You have to have building blocks, the power generation, the compression equipment, the absorber equipment, and the pressurization, etc. So many areas of the plant can be standardized so that we can benefit from the cost scaling of using the same thing over and over again. It is possible, but you need an EPC to do it.
Maybe if I can add my comments on that. So as I showed in my presentation, so our whole philosophy is based on the standardization. So we have prefabricated modules, we have different sizes. So then when we have repetition, we can bring the cost very low. So that's the whole key of our modular waste energy power plant and the CC Voima unit, that it's standardized. So we have 20,000 tons, 75,000 tons, and 200,000 tons as just an examples of a ready-made product that we replicate.
Mhm.
And there are, in every project, there are some parts which you cannot standardize. So those are, then we just have to manage the interface well. So there are certain parts which is standardized, there are certain parts which we cannot, but then that's the interface which we have to manage well.
Mhm. Okay. Thank you very much both for your feedback. Yes. That's good. Really good to know. But my only concern is, do you want someone like the government to lead this kind of discussion, or just let the market players to negotiate each other? Because the standardization would trigger some kind of the business issues among the players. So maybe some countries might be a little bit careful about this kind of discussion, especially those countries who try to promote domestic industries. So in that sense, may I know any the feedback from the marketplace? I mean, representing countries like the India or the People's Republic of China. So, Professor Priyanka, do you have any feedback to this kind of standardization activities?
No, I think standardization would be a wonderful thing to achieve. But if you look at the technologies, they are very much at the onset. We are yet to demonstrate something which is globally kind of an appealing, right? I mean, token examples are there, demonstration projects are happening, technologies are yet to mature to a level where we have the full confidence that yet it will work in any part of the globe. So standardization, if it happens, nothing as good as that. But till that happens, till we achieve that, whatever is there with us, we have to work with that. That is one. And then, of course, we look forward to standardization. Coming back to your previous question, that how we can deploy these technologies, the challenges here in Asian market. See, if you look at renewable and solar, for example, I mean, look at the way India is leading this the solar deployment, right? It is because of the policy support which is there. It is because of all the taxation mechanism that has been brought in place, and in a vast and extremely complex democratic setup like India, if it is doable, I don't see a reason why CCUS cannot do, because the benefit of CCUS is you can retrofit. And the land footprint is very small. I mean, if you look at solar, one thing which is fundamental issue with solar is the huge amount of land footprint that is required. So here, and it is not something that we can retrofit. Here we have a power plant or a high point source of emission, steel industry, hydrogen, fertilizer industry, for example, ammonia is another major high point source of emission. Can we bring in a solution? So if we can demonstrate that it is doable even at a small scale with high degree of maturity, I see a large potential here. Given the kind of businesses that are housed here in Asian continent, I think we are looking for some kind of demonstration. The industry is looking for some kind of confidence in the technologies that are there, the robustness of the technology, and some market push, some tools from the banking sector and the policy as well. But as I told you, if we can do it in renewable, this is, in my opinion, is not as challenging as the solar had been when it all started. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Priyanka. I fully agree with you. Yes, India has made a big success in this area, and why not for the CCUS? Yeah. So also, as an international financier and as an honest broker, so I hope the ADB can also intervene and support this kind of activities also through our technical assistance activities or whatever kind of organizing the international conference. And let me also listen to the Dr. Liang, because you are kind of representing the people of China, but also you also work in the UK, which is leading this industry. So may I know your view about this discussion, please?
Yes, thanks, Ashu. And I think in the UK, there's a cost reduction task force used to provide some estimate. And the government also provides a lot of funding for front-end engineering design for a few projects, which will give very reasonable estimate. In Australia, GCCSI also provide regular report on costing of CCUS around the world, which is also a useful benchmark and a reference. However, CCUS project is so complicated, it's always combine different types of capture from different concentration of flue gas CO2 and different distance for storage and different models for transportation, like offshore and onshore, are largely different, and the different storage or utilization method. So we talk about methane oil production by hydrogen combination with CO2, but there are also utilization through mineralization from waste from steel mill, which is also very attractive, financially attractive options to utilize CO2. And I know EOR has got a lot of opposition, but still there are potential for enhanced oil recovery, and different geological storage situation also different. So it will be very hard to have a very simple standardization, but it will be beneficial to have a more technical study to make the cost estimation standard framework and identify sourcing match for the whole Asia, and every country developer, project owner, banks, and oil and gas company, they can get a reasonable estimate, maybe minus plus 30%, and for the cost and the viability. And our CCUS center in Guangdong is helping Guangdong province and the Ningxia province to develop CCUS planning and survey every large stationary emission source from power, steel, cement, petrochemical, paper making, etc. About 300 projects, and try to identify what will be the technical process for retrofit and for transport to carbon capture and storage, and what's the utilization potential, storage potential, and how to plan backbone pipelines if future carbon price arrive to different level. And we feel this exercise will be very helpful if the whole Asia have one very systematic projects to identify all stationary emission sources, potential storage site, utilization option. That will be very useful guidance for all fossil fuel plant in across different countries. So I know ADB also did some interesting study to do some sourcing match in Southeast Asia, in China in the past. That could be a very good foundation.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Liang. Yes, yeah. So thank you very much all for a very insightful the feedback, and I wish we could continue this exciting discussion, but the time is running, and we have some questions also from the audience. So Darshak-san, so do you want to take a lead, or do you want me to read one by one?
Susan, we are really running short of time, but yeah, maybe we can just take one question, and then maybe then we can go towards the last closing remarks by Dr. Nam.
Okay, so I recognize one question, so let me read out. So this is for both Henrik and Henry. Usually pure K2CO3 alone has a very low efficiency to capture CO2. Usually it requires additional of some additives. Do you have a comment on this? This is a really technical question, but yeah, please, Mr. Henrik and Henry.
I can comment very briefly that in the standard solution that we have, you don't need any additives. In case you need to capture very high rate and it's some special use, we might want to use some chemical, but obviously that will affect the OPEX.
Okay. The question actually is two questions. One is, what is the efficiency of capturing CO2 using K2CO3, which is carbonate? And the answer is, it is true that at atmospheric pressure, it has very low efficiency, which is why in our process, every capture plant is a pressurized system, which means that if you introduce 6, 7, 8, 10 to 20 bar pressure, the efficiency is skyrocketing. It is very, very highly efficient. And the answer, so therefore you have to have a pressurized system in order to use K2CO3, also known as hot potassium carbonate. When it comes to additives, the answer is yes, there are additives. You have accelerators, you have anti-corrosion, anti-foaming. There are tiny different areas of the efficiency of the process itself, the chemistry, which requires additives. So in our case, yes, there are additives. They are harmless. They don't do any bad. They do a lot of good. And you have different parts of chemistry sorted out by additives, which industry has been doing for tens of years, by the way. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for both your answer. Yeah, I hope your answer they meet the expectation from the audience. So now we are closing this session. So before closing the session, I think can we have the one word from each of the distinguished speakers? Maybe you can tell the expectation to this industry or any suggestions how to scale up the CCUS further in Asia and the Pacific. So let me first invite the Professor Priyanka. Yeah, so please.
Yes, I'm very hopeful about the future of this technology. I think the market mechanisms have to be developed, the taxation, the policies have to be brought in place, and the demonstration of the technology has to happen at a larger scale. If that is achieved, I do see that it will diffuse very fast. The CCUS technology will diffuse very fast. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So next, let me invite the Dr. Liang, please.
So I want to say 3 points. One is the political buy-in to see the importance to demonstrate CCS as a large scale from highest political buy-in from each Asian country has capacity to do it. And secondly, a long-term carbon price estimation forecast for 2030, 2040, 2050, because current carbon market price is only representing the short term. So if there's a very concrete longer-term carbon price forecast, industry could start to do the preparation. And the third point is similar to Priyanka, and if Article 6 or border carbon adjustment can recognize exemption for large-scale CCS projects to in the scheme, so I think there will be demand to do something. Even export still is not majority, but still will have some demand in Asian countries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So let me invite Mr. Henry of Wyoming, please.
Yes. Yeah, I'm not muted. So technology is here. So we need demonstration plans. We need a certain push from the governments, from the public sector. But as I said, I think business will find a way. We have to have some demonstration plans, show that technology works. We need to show that there is business around it. And I'm very, very optimistic that that will happen. And we need to do something. And definitely this will be just a matter of time. And I see that this is more like a battery business. So it will be booming rapidly. I'm very optimistic. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So Mr. Henrik, please.
Well, I would say, in addition to policy incentives, a carbon market price for carbon dioxide, I think government bodies should also be demanding to the technology providers. We need to come forward. You have to ask for performance. You have to ask for evidence of performance. You should ask for clear costing. And I also think that in the interim, in the early stage, right now, ADB, for example, could come out and say, we are prepared to fund research into sequestration and depository sites and transportation and everything that goes with that logistics. Because if we assume for a moment that technology is there, what is not there in Southeast Asia is a plentiful place to put the CO2. So my vote goes for people like you, yourselves, open up for asking all parties interested to come for funding for logistics and sequestration. That will be my wish. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much both. Yeah. Today we had really exciting and intensified discussions. Yes, and definitely this would contribute to the further deployment of the CCUS concept in Asian and Pacific countries. So having said that, let me return the floor to the Darshak-san. So Darshak-san, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Atsu-san. I mean, I wish we had more time. We could have gone ahead for a much longer time with such an expert panel. So like all good things in life, I mean, this is going to come to an end, and I would like to invite Dr. Ki-Yu Nang to this. He is Principal Energy Specialist, Energy Economist at Sustainable Development and Climate Change Department of ADB. He is also leading the technical assistance through which this particular deep dive workshop has been organized. Not only that, he is also leading the whole Asia ASF 2022. So he is really busy, but he has chosen and decided to give time to this closing remark, and has listened very carefully to what has been said throughout. So I'll invite Dr. Nam to say his words on and give a final closing remark to the session. Thank you. Over to you, Dr. Nam.
Thank you, Darshak. Thank you all. This is given that this is already we are more than 5 minutes past. So I'll just I would like to just comment all the distinguished speakers as well as the participants. In particular, also congratulating Atsu-san for the engaging discussion. I mean, this fruitful discussion, during the whole deep dive workshop. So this we heard very well. We learned very well from the speakers that who presented a promising future of the respective technologies. And we also like to see that also promoting their deployment in Asia. So what we do is we will further promote with which is also part of the energy policy, that will promote the CCUS technologies as a means of the greenhouse gas reducing technology in collaboration with our partners, including the private sector as well. So as very briefly, like Henry was saying, that we are doing at the moment CCUS activities through the technical assistance program. There is some that we are doing we are supporting Indonesia regulatory measure or regulations on the carbon capture storage, as well as the TA. We just initiated one in Vietnam to identify the proper sites that we can capture. It's a capture part, is not. It's how to store them. Later on that we can make a use out of that one. So we are doing that at the moment. We also need your collaboration also, but also from the government. That issue come from the investment is not happening at the moment. So not much. So we are expecting. We hope that we get some of this investment, actual investment projects with deploying the carbon capture CCUS technology. So having said that, I think I will close that. I just would like to make my final notes. Special thanks to our ASF team and our colleagues like Asu as well, for sure, and Kishan, as well as the ASF team, Mark, Michelle, their effort in organizing this deep dive workshop. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll stop here. Bye.
Thank you.